Hi, everyone. I'm delighted to be joined today by the amazing Laura Tynan, aka the Witch of Wall Street. She's here to talk to us about women and money during and after divorce. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you, Chloe. It's really lovely to be here with you.
Thanks for joining us. Before we dive into our topic today, I want to make sure that I give you the introduction you deserve. And your list of accomplishments is long, so I might have to refer to my notes here. For those of you who don't know, Laura is a London based financial educator for women, a gender equality advocate, and an award winning speaker and podcast host. Her talents have not gone unnoticed. She was named one of the top 20 women future leaders by the Financial Times, a global champion for women in business by Yahoo Finance, and she's spoken at and been featured in Forbes. Most importantly, Laura is passionate about educating women on all things money, investment, and wealth. She's joining us today to answer my questions on women and money during and after divorce.
Thank you, Chloe. I'm super excited to get into this conversation. All things money and women is definitely my vibe.
So let's start with a bit of level setting. As I just mentioned, as the Witch of Wall Street, your services are focused on women.
Mhm.
Is that because women face a different set of challenges than men when it comes to financial acumen?
Yeah, for sure. So, the whole purpose of the Witch of Wall Street obviously is to empower women because personally, my own journey has been one that's been rooted in female empowerment. And throughout my years as a business owner, it became very apparent to me very quickly that I can't talk about female empowerment if I'm not actually really addressing one of the biggest gaps that exist, which is female financial empowerment. And from my experience, I was working with incredibly bright, successful women. But when we'd have conversations of, what are you now doing with this, with your money? How are you managing it? There was few, if ever, any woman that I would meet who was consciously managing her money in a way that was setting herself up to achieve future financial goals or investing her money to build wealth. And when I began to do some research around this and look at, like, is this just my unique experience with my clients, or is this something kind of more broadly that needs to be addressed, it became very apparent that there's actually this massive gap, and women are again on the wrong side of it in that sense. So that's really why we focus on women specifically. Now, a lot of women I speak with feel really bad, Chloe, when we have conversations around money, because I have this sense of shame or guilt of, like, I should be better with money, or I should know better, or like, why haven't I figured this out yet? And there's always some negative connotation that comes up for them. And so what I always refer them back to is, like, let's just take a quick peek back in history, right? Because when we look at it, you can realize why so many women feel this way. And again, this is why we focus on women specifically, because it hasn't been a level playing field for men
Yeah.
and women. And again, I'm not a man basher, like, love men, all that. This isn't a them conversation. It's looking at women specifically.
Mhm.
And we look back to like the 1960s and 1970s. It's only then in the UK and the US that women were able to open up bank accounts and get mortgages and credit cards in their name without a male co-signer. And that is so recent for us. Like, that's not even a generation, when you look at it. And so if we look at understanding, how are women managing their money? How are we feeling confident with actually taking on that responsibility? And how are we looking to build future wealth for ourselves so we are financially independent, regardless of your career, your marital status, whatever it is? And so the more I began to look at it, the more I began to speak with women, it became very, very apparent to me that this was an issue, this was a challenge that women needed to overcome. And I felt, looking back at my own history, as Steve Jobs says, you can only join the dots looking backwards. I felt really well placed to be able to bridge those gaps for women and present the world of finance in a very female friendly way, right? We're not the chest beating, aggressive Wall Street bros. We're quite the
Yeah.
opposite. It's like open community where women can feel supported to go on that step by step journey of becoming more financially and confident, empowered, and knowing that, yes, I can do this for myself. So yeah, one of many reasons that we definitely focus on women.
That really resonates with me. Thank you, Laura. I think a lot of my female clients in particular really have to deal with the impact of that societal backdrop, and it becomes even more problematic during divorce. So what would you recommend to women who aren't used to managing the household finances with regards to upskilling themselves?
Yeah, so if this is something that's going to be completely new for someone, like I understand it may bring up some anxiety or fear or sense of overwhelm. And the first thing to know is like that's okay. As I've just said, like women haven't really been empowered with the whole taking control of money. Even if we look at money media or if we look at the gender roles and the gender norms, like money media talks to men and women very differently. Women are told to scrimp and save and coupon so that we can cut back every single penny. And men are told to go out there and invest and build wealth, right? And be financially empowered. Like the studies out there, there was a great study by Starling Bank showing that vast contrast. And again, with the gender roles, if you are in a very traditional marital situation, typically, and I've seen this in my own family and in women around me, women will take on the primary caregiving role and men go out to continue to do the work. And again, that's there for a reason too, and that's fine. But it's understandable when women feel a sense of apprehension, perhaps in saying, okay, now it's my job to do this.
Yeah.
The first thing to know is you are so capable. Like you are so capable. It's likely being made feel really complex or challenging to do. For many reasons. When we look at media, when we look at our history, for a multitude of reasons why you may feel that way. So I think as the very first thing is to shift that mindset of like, even if it does feel scary, like, oh, I can do this. I'm not going to blame myself. I'm not going to fall into victim of this shouldn't be the way, it shouldn't have happened to me or things like this. I'm going to decide, okay, other women have been in my shoes and I'm going to move forward. So step one is
Totally
always
agree.
shift that mindset. Of course you can do this. Like there's no, it's just numbers at the end of the day. We're just looking at numbers. That's all we're going to focus on. The second thing I would suggest is taking it step by step. And so first step would be setting yourself up a money date, right? And a money date is something I love to take women through. It's a date with yourself. And I see it almost honestly, Chloe, as like a self-care practice
Mm-hmm.
because our relationship with money is a real thing, right? We all are in relation with this thing called money in our world, whether we realize it or not. So just like any other relationship in our life, if we want that to be a positive, thriving one, we need to spend some time with it. And even at the start, it might be a little bit awkward, or it might be a bit scary, or you might be like, oh God, I haven't been on a first date with my money in a long time. It's okay, but we're still going to sit there and we're going to dedicate some time for ourselves. And, for women that I've worked with, as we move forward, a monthly money date is perfect. But oftentimes, if this is your first time doing it, maybe it's something you do weekly because you don't want to
Okay.
say, I'm not going to look at a month of my expenses or look at everything at once. Maybe it's like, you know what, this week, I'm just going to open up all of my accounts. And so I can understand where the money is, what's actually happening with it, what's coming in, what's going out, what's my actual financial situation. And so sometimes just doing it week by week just feels more accessible and less overwhelming at start. So a money date is definitely something that I highly recommend for everyone. It's one of my favorite things to do every month. You feel more confident, at ease, relaxed around your money. You know what's happening. You know what needs to change. Um, Another thing I would really suggest is a money diary. I can't emphasize how much we all underestimate what we're spending and where we're sending our money. And it can be
Mm-hmm.
on simple things like subscriptions, or like I was a culprit of in London of like too many black cabs, too many just like throwing away money on silly things, right? And
Yeah.
it's not like you can't treat yourself, you got to cut back to the bare minimum. It's just awareness, right? Awareness is the key piece. And this, if you're on this journey to become empowered, you can't get there unless you really know where you are and what's actually happening with your money. So keeping a money diary, and that can be something super simple, Chloe. I'm not like, you don't need lots of Excel pages. You don't need like fancy models. You can open
Yeah.
up your phone and say, for 14 days, I'm going to keep a money diary. And for everything I'm going to spend, I'm just going to jot it down in my phone in my notes section. What am I spending? Why? And how do I feel? Right? The
Mm-hmm.
feeling piece is actually really key because,
I love that.
mm, yeah, emotional spending is something that we can probably all put our hands up and say, yes, I have done once or twice maybe in my life. And so, especially if we're going through times of intense emotions or stress, increased emotional states, we want to be really aware of how are we actually using your money in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
because I have been there myself where I've been in a stressful moment and I think going to the shopping center, maybe buying something for myself is going to make it all better. but all it's going to do is leave less money in my bank account.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Yeah. So we can use some other practices. And, as the witch side of what we do, we look at things like tapping and breath work and different modalities to help us actually bring down and neutralize our emotional state so we can make more logical, clear minded decisions and not let emotions really run away with us. And I think for anyone to start shifting that mindset, setting up a money date, and just having awareness through a money diary is going to be a great place just to get them on that journey of like, no, I can do this. It's just numbers, right? I've conquered life. I'm here. I can do this.
I love it. Thank you so much. Those are great tips, and I think I'll start having money dates with myself. I might be scared about what I see, but it sounds like a great habit to take it, especially when you're trying to figure out how you're spending your money, and to get a little bit more awareness around that. So now let's talk about the financial impact of the divorce itself. So as you know, a lot of people end up spending vast amount of money on their divorce. They don't necessarily have to, but they
Mhm.
choose to spend a lot on lawyers or on court hearings. And a lot of couples end up dipping into their savings and sometimes even getting into debt. What strategies can you share with us with regards to dealing with divorce debt?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a divorce expert or anything like this, but I've had plenty of people around me go through these situations in life to know enough from a financial point of view that obviously the ideal situation is to try and keep it out of court, to try and have something that's more amicable and reduce any legal fees that are involved. Like that's step one, if that's a possibility. Now, I also have someone very close in my life who's going through this exact situation. And I know for sure, no matter what she could do, there's no way this is going to be an amicable separation. Like lawyers will need to be involved, and that can
Yeah.
become quite expensive. I know one tactic that some women around me have approached, especially when legal fees have become incredibly high. And especially if they're in a situation where perhaps if they're in a more traditional role where like their partner was the income earner and they're not and they don't necessarily have the same financial resources is well, two options. So of course there's legal aid that you can use as an option. They have different ways to help individuals going through divorce. And a second option is if that doesn't work for you, finding a lawyer who may be willing to take some amount of payment up front, but actually take the rest of it after the settlement date, which I've
Hmm.
also seen happen as well, which can just help try and reduce the burden of constantly putting money out on a lawyer, waiting for any kind of future income. So there are things that I've seen work in situations like that. It's always going to be tricky though. Like it's
Yeah.
expensive to get married, it's expensive to get divorced, and that's kind of how it is. I think if you're in a situation in your relationship pre-divorce where you can kind of see, look, the writing's on the wall and that's where we're going to be going, it's to, as best you can, really get yourself financially ready for that. Making sure that what I call an FU fund, but it's your emergency savings fund, are there, that you have that financial backing behind you, you have some savings in place, and you're really taking yourself on those money dates, taking that money diary out, really looking at where am I sending money right now? Because I don't want to go into this where now all of a sudden my life, my lifestyle, everything around me, my securities are being challenged because of this separation. So they're just some pointers that I think would be helpful if I was going through it.
Now, thanks. That makes a lot of sense. Um, I think we have time for one last question before we wrap up today. So, what would be your top three recommendations to any woman who's trying to become financially independent for the first time in her life?
Ooh. Top three recommendations. Okay, so getting personal with your personal finances. Like, no matter what way we look at it, Chloe, we can try and make finance sound really complicated, but it's money in, it's money out, and it's how we grow our money. Like, that's really in a nutshell all we're looking at. So, really getting confident, getting personal with your personal finances. Again, coming back to that money date, I highly recommend every single woman to take themselves on a money date. The feedback from my clients has been like they've found pensions, they've found savings in places they didn't know they exist, they found subscriptions that they weren't even using that were costing them way too much. So money date has to be upfront. The second piece would be understanding the different ways in which you can build wealth. And so the way that I really promote, because I've seen it to be the most effective, is through investing. So finding a way, and of course it's something at the Witch of Wall Street that we do offer. We offer programs and experiences like this where women can understand how the financial markets work, how they can invest in it to build wealth in the long term. And so that would be second. And thirdly would be your mindset. Right? One of my mentors, Tony Robbins, used to always say, or still does, I'm sure, it's 20% strategy, but it's 80% psychology, because we can know what to do, but if our mind isn't in the right place, we won't do it. And so I could sit down with someone and say, here's your perfect money date guide, your template, here's how the financial markets work, and here's how you can invest, and here's the results you can expect. And that can be amazing. But if they don't have the mindset to say, oh, I can do this, or this is for me, or this is a priority, or it's safe to do this, then they'll never take action. And again, it's why within my own company, we blend wealth and woo, we blend strategy, spirituality, we blend all these pieces, because you're a full human being, you're a full individual, and you're not just a robot who I can, plug in a program and say, this is what you should do. You're a person with emotions and traumas from the past, and, your own stories and narratives around money as a child, right? There's all these things at play. So we need to really take like a 360 view of things when we're looking to shift our narrative around money and go on that journey to building financial independence, empowerment, freedom for ourselves. So yeah, that's what I would say. Money date, understanding how to build wealth in the financial markets, and get your mindset right.
Those are great tips. Thank you so much, Laura. I think that's it for today. So thank you all very much for listening. And thanks again, Laura, for joining us and for sharing your insights and wisdom with us.
Thank you, Chloe.
Have a great day.